a little bit of a different flavor. We're actually going to be doing more of a Q&A format, which I'm really, really excited about, because my goal is to support you guys in the best way I can. And I want to make this really relevant. So I know that I've had a couple of questions come through. If you do have any questions as we go through, please pop them in the comments. I'd absolutely love to be able to answer them for you. I'm just going to keep an eye on the notifications here. So yeah, I just want to be here for you guys, give you the option to ask your questions. So fire away. I'm going to give you guys a couple of minutes to get in and get sorted. All right, I'm just going to get up these questions so I can actually see them and see everyone else. Alrighty, okay, so here we have it. One question that came in earlier yesterday was around plant-based protein sources. So some of you may know that I actually follow a plant-based diet. So the question was, okay, so what kind of foods are higher in plant-based proteins? So things that I'll often go for are things like beans and legumes. Now, some people may have issues with beans and legumes. So your lentils, your chickpeas, your black beans, etc. Chickpeas are going to be the worst. So the thing is, when you're looking at more of a plant-based diet, is that because you're eating plants, there's a lot more fiber. So it's going to fill you up quicker. And that can often mean that we might not eat as much and might not get as many nutrients. But what happens with the protein is that their plants are really clever. They've created these kind of acids that when animals in nature eat them, phytic acid, it's called, it actually upsets their digestive tract. So some people can actually have issues with plant-based proteins. Chickpeas are the worst. So a way to get around that, if you're having a few issues with digesting legumes and beans, is to pressure cook them. They do come already pressure cooked in your cans. Please make sure you look for BPA-free linings. The plastics are chemicals and impact our hormones. That's a story for another day. So looking at pressure cooking your beans and legumes is a really good source of plant-based protein. The other thing that I'll often go for is I'll either get pea or rice protein powders, and I will put them in my smoothies. I will put them in my berry crumble recipe. And I also have experimented with hemp protein powder. Now, this is a really earthy flavor, but for those of you who can't do the beans and the legumes, the hemp protein powder is a really great way to get a really high amount of protein, because the hemp seeds can be quite full of fat. Like, we need to watch our fat intake, our energy intake. Fat doesn't make us fat, but too much of anything is not a good thing. So we want to try the protein powder. So what I do with the hemp protein is I just grab it from the health food store or the supermarket. Always organic is best, but do what you can do within your budget and your location. And I actually then put it in my my mushroom bolognese that I make. I put everything in at the end, because hemp seeds are quite sensitive to heat. They can denature them. So what we want to do is, I put in last minute either my mushroom bolognese. I also put it in my pulled jackfruit that I make. So to make the jackfruit less carbs and more protein is, to add in the hemp powder. So if you go on my website, greentaraWellness.com.au, and just type in hemp, you'll find heaps of recipes using hemp. Which brings me to another question that I got about sugar cravings, which I'll go to in a moment. However, a really great way to support your sugar cravings is to make sure that you're getting protein in your diet, and you're combining your carbs, your healthy fats, and your protein. Your protein is going to make you feel fuller for longer. And so that's one tip I've got with sugar cravings. Make sure you're getting as best you can protein at every meal, because it feeds it. Like, the more carbs and sugars we have, the more that we crave, and it does actually alter our gut bacteria. So then our gut bacteria goes, oh, I love sugar, give me more sugar, and we get more sugar gut bugs. That's in layman's terms, for you guys, just to briefly explain that. I mean, all these questions coming in, like this live could last hours, but I want to be mindful of your time and keep it short and sweet as best I can. So that's around plant-based protein sources. If you've got any more questions about that, pop them in the comments and I can get back to those once the live is done. One thing to be mindful of with plant-based protein sources is that they don't have all the amino acids that we need. So the amino acids, the building blocks for our proteins, and proteins make up pretty much everything in our body. Like, we need these amino acids, which are the building blocks of our proteins, and our proteins are used as enzymes in our body, so to catalyze reactions. They're used obviously in structures and so many different things that they're used for. So with a plant-based option, we're missing all the amino acids. So apart from soy, quinoa, and amaranth, they have all the amino acids. So there's 9 essential amino acids, and they have all of those, whereas say legumes don't. So the way to get all of your amino acids in one meal, because you want them at every meal, is to combine your beans and your grains, or your beans and your nuts and seeds. That's how you get all the amino acids that you need without worrying about it. Unless you have soy, quinoa, or amaranth, you're going to get those anyway. Some people have soy, some people don't. Some people say it impacts on hormones. Some people are fine with it. Tune into what works for your body. So that's my thing around protein. Second question was around health coming into winter. So how many of you kind of get to wintertime and start to get a bit unwell? Immune system kind of is a bit down, things like that start to happen. So what we want to do is not just focus on this in winter, but the build up to winter is really, really important. So how many of us have a real great hoot of a time over summer? We might be out more, we might be partying more, we might be drinking more, doing all these great things that we do when the weather is more favorable. Then come winter though, like, our bodies are kind of just like run down, and we can get hit harder with colds and things like that. Hey Ash, see Ash popping over on Facey. Feel free to shoot me through any questions you got, girl. So what we really need to think about is not just winter if we're getting sick, if we're getting recurrent colds. We also want to look at, okay, what am I doing in the lead up to winter? And noticing like what may be contributing to you being run down in the lead up, because maybe during winter there's more going around, there's more in the air, you're more susceptible to it. So what we really want to focus on is always prevention when it comes to getting sick during winter. So I'm going to talk about the prevention side of things, and then I'm going to talk about, okay, what can you do when you're feeling really shitty? I remember a couple of years ago, I think I maybe had just finished my health coaching training. It's quite a while ago now, actually. And I was bedridden for 4 weeks over winter. And I had like a pharyngitis or something like that. It was horrible. And I was chatting to one of my friends earlier. This is where this question came from. She said, I'm living off bread and stuff. And I literally lived off sourdough bread and Vegemite for 4 weeks, because that's all I felt like eating. That's all I really could eat. My throat was sore. So I'm going to talk to that and some ideas of what you can do to kind of start to get back on track with that. But to start with, we really want to look at building our immune system. So the main way our immune system gets knocked out, we get burnt out, we get sick, is stress. Stress suppresses our immune system. So first and foremost, my first question for you is, okay, what is happening in your life? Like, what's contributing to you becoming ill? Like, I used to get sick every single winter. So then the second thing is, okay, if it's not stress, or maybe it is, maybe it's a combination of both, gut health. What's happening with your gut health? As soon as I sealed and healed my gut and focused on my gut health, and also my stress, I never get sick in winter. Like, maybe I had like a tiny sniffle, over winter. So really focusing on your stress, focusing on your gut health. I'll give you some tips on that, but also building muscle. Muscle mass actually supports our immune system as well. And I know a few of you who have trained with me before, and the beautiful Miranda at Raw Active Studios, she talks all about this. Like, I felt the healthiest and the fittest and the strongest in my immune system when I was, doing weight training. So weight training will really help as well, build your immune system. But in regards to your gut health, so if you're having some concerns, if it's showing up in your skin, if you're having digestive issues, mood, anything like that, is like, okay, let's have a look. What do we need to do with our gut? Like, are we having a lot of those inflaming foods like dairy, gluten, soy, corn, alcohol, coffee, refined sugar? what can we start to eliminate or cut out or reduce for now? And then I've got my Seal and Heal protocol on my website of how we can actually then support our gut health. So it's like, okay, well, what do we need to then bring in to be able to support it? Because I spoke to a client yesterday, is that if we've got all of these good and bad bacteria in our gut, it's like a war, and the bad bacteria is kind of winning at the moment because of the stress, all of the different foods that we're eating that may not be as favorable. And so the good bugs are like trying to fight, but the bad bugs are overtaking. Then we go and add probiotics and ferments and things like that in there. There's just too much happening, and it can just cause more digestive stress. So we want to start to balance out the gut bacteria by decreasing those inflaming foods and bringing in more whole foods, bringing in more nutrients, because different foods have different microbes and things like that. I'm going on such a tangent, but I'm so passionate about this. So really looking at cutting out those allergenic foods first, then maybe look at bringing in a tablespoon of sauerkraut. Like my Nourish Bowl recipe has just gone up on my website this week. I've been loving that coming into winter. So getting as many ferments in my diet as I can coming into winter. So I cannot stand sauerkraut on its own. I'll be honest with you. I was chatting to my beautiful sister-in-law, Kendra, the other day, and she's like, yeah, we've had a jar of sauerkraut. I can't stand it. But I find if I mix it in with my Nourish Bowl, my Buddha bowl, burrito bowl, poke bowl, whatever you want to call it, and I mix it in, and I've got like olives and cashew cheese and all these beautiful flavors, a small tablespoon of sauerkraut doesn't break the bank. It actually gives it that saltiness. It's actually really yummy, and I crave it. So there's a tip for your sauerkraut if you're struggling to do that, because you can go and spend lots of money on probiotics, and you could definitely do that. You could definitely bring in a probiotic, but what about if we start with, bring in some sauerkraut, kimchi? Kombucha is kind of like the gateway drug to our ferments and to our gut health, because of the way it's processed. So your best bet is to go for your fermented veggies over your kombucha, things like that. So focusing on your stress, looking at how you're supporting your gut with, decreasing those foods that are impacting on it, bringing in some ferments. Now, you've got to be careful though with ferments. Some people can have issues with the histamines. So if you need further support on this, that there's so many supports out there, professionals, including myself, that can help you with this. But the big thing, I suppose, coming into winter that I love to do is and I do this all year round, is getting into broths. So whether it's vegetable broths, whether it's bone broths, whatever tickles your fancy, to be able to have those, it's going to be a nice warm cup of goodness, like of liquid full of heap of nutrients. It's also going to support your gut health. So bring in your broths is a really good thing to do. I've got recipes on my website for a beautiful veggie broth. Obviously, those of you that choose to do bone broths can do that as well. Things like I'm just giving you guys a list of things you can maybe start to look at, like looking at having some bloods done to see if you're deficient in any of your vitamins and minerals, particularly your vitamin Ds, your vitamin Bs, things like that. So that's what I do. I focus on really warming, nutritious food. If I'm really sick and I feel like I really cannot handle any of that, and I'm just like really craving carby foods, look at the quality of it. So, going for really, really processed bread from the supermarket versus going for like artisan baked sourdough, spelt bread, grain, things like that. So looking at, okay, if I'm really, really sick right now and I can't manage anything else, like what's the best version of that I can choose? And soups, I always come back to soups. So in the lead up to winter, I'll do a big batch of soups, and then I've got them in the freezer as a backup. So if I need, if I am unwell, that is probably a big key in this. When you get unwell, you don't feel like cooking, you don't have the energy. So always have a backup of food, cook once, eat twice. And I always have some out, and then I'll freeze some. So you've got that backup to support you when you're not feeling well. There's so many other things you can do. Teas, herbal teas are so good for this. My favorite right now is the thyroid tea that comes from the medical medium. And it's fennel, it's thyme, and it's lemon balm. So lemon balm is really calming. They're herbs that are really great antiviral, antibacterial. So they're really good to support your immune system. So check out the thyroid tea over on my website. That's another option. But herbs are just so healing. So more on that later. Big topic. Always consult with someone if you are having medications and stuff, because there can be interactions. So that's just one disclaimer I'll put out there. Always make sure that you cross all your T's, dot all your I's before you do that. And last one, sugar cravings. But let me recap. So we talked about how to support, being proactive with your health coming into winter, building your immune system, lots of nourishing warm foods, vegetable or bone broths, looking at soups, looking at making sure you're supporting your gut health, your stress. Sugar cravings. Okay, this is a big topic. This is something that I have so many of my clients come to me with, and we could talk all day and night on sugar cravings. And there's so many different aspects to all of this. Like, these are just very general tips that I'm giving you because every person is different and we need to chat one-on-one to see what was happening. But what I want to do is give you some really basics, hey Holly, on sugar cravings. There's so many different reasons why we may be getting sugar cravings. It may come down to stress and hormones, and maybe we're lacking things in our diet, like an energy, like so many things can impact. And also can be that we're trying to fill up. We're trying to fill up with our food, emotional eating, if we're not feeling fulfilled or full in other aspects of our life. So think about when kids are outside playing. You're like, come on, come have some lunch. And they're just like, I'm not hungry. But if they're sitting inside all day in front of the TV and they're bored, they're hungry 24/7. So if we're not filling up with those primary foods, those foods that really fuel us, like our career, relationships, physical activity, and spirituality, then we're going to choose to put foods in our mouth and we're going to have those cravings. So first notice, where are my sugar cravings coming from? If you can kind of identify that. And there's heaps of tools on my website. If you type in sugar, it'll all come up with like the reasons. There's so many reasons to sugar cravings. It'll give you some tips and tricks, but I'm going to give you some really basic ones today to help. Just a couple, to give you some ideas, is to look at, okay, am I hungry or thirsty? Often thirst can be disguised as hunger. So go for a glass of water before you give into the craving. The second thing to do is bake whole food, like treats, or maybe not treats, but bake whole food, fruits and vegetables. Like, I love my berry crumble because it's like whole fruits, and I get like amazing sweetness from that. But I know that it's like whole foods and it's going to be supporting my hormones and my blood sugars more than going for like refined sugar and stuff like that. So really focusing on like, where's it coming from, and making sure that you're like, have stuff prepared. So bake healthy options, which is plenty of recipes on my website. But my go-to at the moment is definitely looking at the berry crumble, which brings me to my point of it has cinnamon in it. Cinnamon is really good for blood sugar balancing, and also looking at having some sweet vegetables to help with those cravings, like things like sweet potato are really good for that. So try some things like that, bringing some cinnamon in, some sweet potatoes, put some cinnamon on your sweet potatoes if you like, bake them up, sweet potatoes. And then also looking at being prepared, so having some whole food options. And honestly, sometimes it's just about that willpower of just like not giving into those cravings, because you eventually will work past them, and they will, your body will adjust. So sometimes it is just that time. So guys, I think we got through it. So we spoke about protein, plant-based protein sources, things like beans and legumes, your soy quinoa, your amaranth, depending on what you choose, your hemp. So many foods have protein in them though, and often we can often overdo our protein intake. We actually don't need as much as what we think. We spoke about colds and prevention and building immune system with gut health, looking at our stress, looking at bone broths, looking at heaps of different things. And then we looked at sugar cravings, trying things like have a drink of water, looking at baking, being prepared, and looking at like cinnamon and sweet veggies to help with that. So if you've got any other questions for next week, or whenever we do this again, I'm not sure yet if we'll do it once a month or once a week, let me know, shoot me a message, comment below. Love to answer your questions, and help serve you guys with what is most relevant. Have a beautiful week, and I'll see you all next week, everyone. And if you've got any topics you really want me to talk about, please share. Here to help. Have a beautiful night. Bye.